Welcome back. You here with Goldberg. Today I'll be talking about the hell of BreadTubers. And here we have Mr. Riverwand, who's extremely intelligent, doing a takedown of Curtis Yarvin, the intellectual behind the Trump presidency. My opinion, Yarvin is annoying to listen to in interviews because he drones on and on. Your best bet is to find his longer blog posts that have been turned into speech with AI on YouTube. It makes it more tolerable. But this particular fellow doing the video, just his arguments are asinine. And it's sad how many people take this stuff seriously. So let's begin. I'll try not to play too much to avoid a copyright strike. If it does happen, we'll upload it to Brother Amer's platform and you can watch it there. Let's commence.
The end of his term. So you have this kid growing up with no consistent friends or community and being bounced around for most of his childhood. To add on to the constant change, he was skipping grades to the point where as a freshman in high school, he was only 11 years old.
Okay, so here we have a nice white schmuck with an open mind, and what does he fill it with? Reddit tier Freudian analysis. They all do this. They are incapable of anything other than it. So, Yarvin had parents that were foreign service officers. He was around the world. You can make a very strong argument that that environment is precisely what liberals pretend to want you to be engaged in. You know, they say be cultured, appreciate different societies. If your parents are diplomats, you're going to be going to an international high school, so you'll be exposed to, granted, probably upper to middle class individuals from varied cultures, but you'll have that. You will see also out and about the contours of these various societies. I would suggest, especially if you're in a country where you're somewhat exotic, you're not brutally sub 5, you might smash earlier than others. Isn't this what the progressives said? We should have a national service program where we take kids from Mississippi and make them work in Harlem so they don't end up racist. They appreciate the struggles of the historically butthurt communities in our nation. But suddenly, having that background makes you narrow-minded and insecure, kind of like those philosophy phase videos where they say you can't get a girlfriend, so you start watching Nietzsche and you develop a superiority complex and you hate black people. This is just ludicrous. I'll briefly cut over here because of the general argument. This girl, YV edits, she has a receding hairline. She sounds like Hillary Clinton, and she's trying to always debunk the manosphere, say that they're wrong about women with hypergamy, that women actually are going for the top 10% of men, that male loneliness epidemic is only because these fellows are toxic and hateful, and you just have to be a good person. So naturally I said, oh, she's going to have a Coco and Obamacare boyfriend, a sub 5 who's impassionate. He's just driving change in the world. And I looked here, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a nice sub 5 boyfriend she has. This is a normal fellow who's just into social justice and Greta Thunberg. Returning to our friend in the hoodie, how many Americans does he believe have access to this lifestyle of the idealized liberal, what he's running interference for? He is being the social vanguard. Because our traditional approach, if we're speaking from a progressive standpoint, is that you go through public schools and college, and obviously you're not being brainwashed to have these very opinions that he's exhibiting, never. And you just get a good job and you work hard and you have plenty of money for vacations, to save for retirement, for your housing. You have tons of friends, which Curtis Yarvin didn't possess because he was an isolationist, racist meanie. You have these acquaintances that you've known since elementary school or high school, and you're always doing stuff. You're having weekends, drinking beer, going on adventures. You also have a wholesome relationship built on equality, no manipulation. As long as you just have the same values, you find each other. How many Americans really possess this? You have to recall, and it's a broader theme where those who are always trying to come and say, come back to the light, be a good boy. Now, Curtis Yarvin, he is a little older. He was married and had kids. She passed, I think, from cancer, but then he got married to another woman. So the fact that he's maybe has some unsavory views, he's not super charismatic, he doesn't have a ton of friends, allegedly, didn't prevent him from making money, starting a company, becoming a court philosopher, and being able to actually reproduce. But for the vast majority of people now, especially Gen Z, how many of them are realistically going to be able to attain these things? So the underlying issue with these leftists is that they want you to fall back in line. Yeah, when you were 15, you entered the cauldron of the alt-right, but then you met a nice progressive girl and she put a river wand in your pipeline, and then you said, I should vote Democrat, because that's what it comes down to. We're not looking at revolutionaries here. We're looking at people that are going to vote for whatever is the center of left option. There's nothing particularly amazing about it.
Come from wealth. And having advantages is okay. It's just use them to help people. So how did this
Why should you use them to help people? Most people are ungrateful. Give them help for free, they scoff at you, they fight you on your advice. That's why the whole entire world, the internet, is dominated by grifters, because they know you might as well make a buck. And once they have to lose some fiat, suddenly they take it seriously. Convenient.
Computer networks.
What was popular was forums, basically like blogging, except these were dark places on the internet. A large part of these forums was a place for white supremacists to recruit, connect, and build out their networks. These forums were insane. They had terrorist organizations talking in these forums because no one was policing the internet.
These dark places. No one was policing the internet back then. So, because white supremacists and Nazis, that just so happen to be the groups everyone who's gone to public school or college has been taught from the time they can remember that these are the bad guys. So let's naturally bring that up because some of them were on the internet back in the day. This is literally the lowest hanging fruit possible. And you think the BreadTubers are targeting millennials and Gen Z, but you look at the comments, you realize many of them are boomers. There was one I saw, isn't it kind of interesting that rich people established democracy in the US and now they want to destroy the government? I'm like, wait, yeah, again, this is the level comprehension of history and the government today versus the government back then. I digress. Let's just continue on.
We should all kneel before him or else. And the person he had in mind originally to run the US was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs would berate his employees, had an insane ego, and even denied he was the father of his daughter for years.
Yeah, Steve Jobs was hyper intelligent and a visionary, and he was a little bit bad when it comes to people skills. Is this surprising? The strange part of it is liberals for the longest times were all lauding this technology, and now they're angry because people that are high IQ but maybe a little bit socially awkward and don't believe that the rules apply to them, i.e. like Elon Musk, these individuals have a great amount of influence. But where was any serious opposition from the leftists against technology? It basically never materialized. Occupy Wall Street expired like the wet fart that it was, and they voted for Obama. So, again, you can say, and I would agree with you, a lot of conservatives are just stooges for the rich, but the left is pathetic. They complain a lot and they do nothing.
That hasn't answered he believes the U.S. should be ran as a monarchy because he says that's how businesses are run. And I wouldn't even have to make a video about him if he just turned into another debate lord Reddit cringe poster on the internet. However,
the irony, my God. Just let's keep going.
Moldbug is writing some insane shit on the internet. He believes that slavery is normal and has endorsed it multiple times. And the reason he says this is because he believes black people are born unequal to white people and they deserve to be treated as less than human.
Slavery is actually normal, and you could make the argument for all these squawking when it comes to the left. They said they would do a general strike to bring down the economy, never materialized. The Fuentesians, the America Firsters, they complain as much as they want about the tech right, and they have no organization, no economic pool. They're just carnival barkers on the internet for the most part. And not trying to hate on, but that's the truth. You can yap endlessly, and when the decisions are made, they're going to come down to who has the money, who's in the back rooms, who has the influence. I did a video some time back that pissed off a lot of people when I said maybe the neocons are right, and it went over the heads of the average like 90 IQ wignat and whatnot. But to say that if they have the power and they can pull the levers and they have the money, they're going to do it. So you need to come up with a strategy to compete with them outside of just barking at their heels. For all that people want to make a big deal, you continue seeing the march of tech, of AI, of this supposedly dystopian technological republic, to borrow the Carpian term. Unless you're prepared to fight, you will be a slave. And this has been written across the history of humanity. It's not terribly controversial. We said the Nexila, the inborn slave soul. And a lot of individuals, they might have gotten gaslit that they have equality, they have all these rights under the Constitution, but when you start seeing how lazy they are, how unmotivated they happen to be, they don't want to get involved, they don't want to expand their understanding. It's just the 5-second takeaway. What's current? What am I being entertained by? Yes, many of them, whether you like the concept or not, they will end up as slaves. The difference is that it's going to be not quite to the extent of maybe the racial hierarchy as much in the future. It will still exist. However, it'll be people en masse that are going to be at the bottom and are going to be essentially irrelevant from the standpoint of them shaking their fists and saying, I won't tolerate this. And they brought it on themselves.
To turn all of the people that were low income into fuel for the city to run on. Now he claims to be trolling.
Obviously, it's some form of trolling, although his alternative was to lock them up and make them watch VR. Isn't that what's steadily happening one way or the other? And this bleeding heart, agonizing, I'm so outraged over these people. Look at the individuals of the protests. Look at the people you see online. Look at this stuff and tell me, do you really care that much? I think it's kind of funny because you see how certain regimes back in the day, they would get rid of particular populations, like medically speaking, sterilization. Oh, how dare you do that? But then you look at our world and you uplift idiots, mumble rappers, people that are morbidly obese, people that are certifiably mentally ill, that have severe disabilities. You see Muslim and indeed some Christian families walking around with these children that will never function normally. Like they have microcephaly, they've got some kind of neurological problem, physical problem, and it's like you're supposed to praise that. I saw this family popped up in a short on YouTube, and the girl, I thought they had done something with AI to the face. I was like, holy mackerel, that's sad. Everyone was, oh, you're so brave, you're so beautiful, you're amazing. And I'm just saying, you don't have to be hateful towards anyone, but you're going, we think we're morally superior, and we're basically a cavalcade, a carnival of freaks. And that's what everyone's supposed to support, and once more, come back to the liberal fold. Be a good boy.
This story the next day and said this act wasn't good enough because he didn't kill enough people. He said he should have killed more people on the left, but at least the one thing he did was shoot communists. Keep in mind earlier, he claimed his grandparents and parents were communists.
Do you have any idea what the communists did and frankly would do if they had the opportunity to take serious power? You probably don't. You probably believe that the Soviets were fighting for democracy, so we can just disregard those opinions. Ironically, Anders Breivik is just a symptom of the failure of democracy. See, this guy's saying that, oh, you know, Yarvin, he's trying to bring down democracy, but democracy is a failure. In Europe, you can vote for certain parties. You can have the most seats, the most support, whether it's the national, regional parliament, and they'll just come up with some nonsensical way to prevent you from taking power because you're not holding the proper opinions, and you might disrupt the rainbow society. The fact that Palantir, all these entities are gaining more control is, again, a failure of democracy because, as I said, people are passive, they're lazy, they want convenience. I might talk about this in another segment, but how many of you can really function without Google? How many of the masses can live their lives without relying on Google while they complain about losing privacy rights and, oh, this corporation's surveilling me? I cannot really sit back and have sympathy with them. I actually have a lot of contempt. So they say J.D. Vance could be king under Yarvin's theories. Hopefully we don't get J.D. Vance as king. But rage, removal, government employees, part of the whole Doge dynamic. And this is where it gets fun because...
And this was my dream job. And it's just being taken away by an administration who doesn't care about science. It doesn't care about people who might be homeless.
Latina geologist So, yeah, woman is crying. Let's all stop. We can't do anything because there are tears from a female. The only thing this video is missing is some brown kid throwing a tantrum, and then we really have to bow down. I have my criticisms of what was done when it came to Doge. I don't like the trend. I will say, of course, and this goes back to you trying to be a social vanguard. How many people have reliable jobs? How many people are able to live this nice lifestyle where they're a good liberal, they support mass immigration, they celebrate whoever's the first doing this, first black woman, first Indian non-binary? How many people can even do that? This is why naturally there wasn't a whole lot of sympathy for these individuals crying over losing government jobs, because if you are some Gen Z person or some failed millennial and you're spitting out applications left and right, you can't get anything. You see some woman who's having a mental breakdown because she might have to look for another job. Are we surprised? But liberals did this. Like I said, liberals should have been the first line of defense over the outsourcing, over the mass immigration, the destruction of a proper society, and they refused to do so. And now they want to turn around and go like, oh, how dare you take away a position that could be impactful to my own existence.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
She responded to a tweet between Elon Musk and Ivanka Trump where they mentioned taking the red pill, and she said, "Fuck you both."
Oh, wow, that's really hardcore. See, when you create some kind of art, like a film or a painting, different people will interpret it and respond to it in various ways. And so the fact that Lana Wachowski, who was not Lana Wachowski when they made the film, by the way, is upset. You know, she has ownership over the art. She gets to decide what it is. That's not how it usually works. I would imagine if you actually knew anything about philosophy, you knew anything about history, you would grasp this basic concept. Let's keep going.
I was used to
saying democracy can no longer be trusted and it will eventually fail. And all these guys repeating the same thing of what even is democracy.
democracy with good government. When you use
Democracy is failing. These people would not have any pull if democracy worked, if democracy kept the rich in line, if democracy was not always being subverted by whoever has more money, if people were plugged in, if these public schools taught them to be good citizens and to learn how the structure works and learn what is sustainable and what is not, and perhaps raise some complaints about foreign policy campaigns. That's not what's going on. So what is it? Because of the rich? Is it because of the public schools? Like, where is democracy failing? Why is democracy so toothless to where, as I said before, you can vote for something and whoever has more money will get their way?
On all of these issues for the past 20 years. No matter how much he learns or reads, his opinions never change. That is the sign of a dumb person.
Wait, okay. But a smart person is, again, the individual who has the same opinions that were spoon-fed to them in a public school. That's the way we're supposed to all think and believe. Or maybe it's that his viewpoints continue to be solidified by observing people like you and the gremlins in the comments and how they respond to issues. And they're, like I said, they're passive, they have no motivation to do anything to change the system. So he's being proven correct. Your video proves that he's actually not all that outside the bounds of a lucid acceptance of the world. And so he finishes the video by saying these guys are cowards, they'll crumble, and they're losers. Losers who are extremely wealthy and are now either influencing the government directly, or in fact, I mean, to an extent with Elon Musk, he was actually part of the government. He still, to an extent, has some ability to push them in a particular direction. So once more, whether you like Yarvin or not, if this is your takedown, it's pretty dang embarrassing. It's always the same dynamic. Let me throw meat to the cringiest elements of society, the ones who believe that somehow if they just act a certain way and have the right opinions, nothing's going to happen to them. Well, this stuff's coming, as Gavin Newsom said, whether you like it or not. And I don't think anyone's really ready. And I'll say that across the board. These conservatives, these America Firsters, they're going to wake up to a crude reality, much like a lot of these liberals. You can try to do your outrage takes, your appeals to what we all agree as Americans should be correct, and it's not going to matter. and you have nothing but yourselves to blame.